In this video we're going to look at some of the things that you'll need if you're going to make a maze game. So I'm going to start off by showing you a few tips on how to actually draw the maze, and then how to move around the maze so that your characters bounce off the sides and they don't just go over the top, and then how your NPCs, your non-playable characters, will move around the maze, and then what happens if you bump into an NPC in the maze, if your main character bumps into one. So let's start off by looking at drawing the maze itself. Now you can draw a maze like this, but I'm just going to show you a different way that you can draw a maze. So in the example that I showed earlier, in this one, I'll show you how I did this one. So if I just open a blank project, delete the cat, and then if I go to my backgrounds here and go to paint, then what I want to do is choose a colour that I want for the walls of my maze. So let's say I'm going to choose this red colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour the whole screen in this. Now I've got to be careful, because if I do this at the minute, it's got a black mark around the edge, and I don't want this black mark around the edge, because I want the characters to turn around if they touch the red colour, and at the moment that's black. So I'm just going to undo that and get rid of it. I'm going to come up here to this outline and choose this little line down here, which means no outline colour. So if I just draw again, you'll see the difference, that there's no black around the edge there. So what I'm going to do is I need to cover all of this background. So I need to just make sure that I can see all of the background. I'm not zoomed in, I can see all of it. So I'm just going to go there and draw around there. If you go over the edges on here, it doesn't really matter as long as it's covered on there. Okay, so what I need to do is just click somewhere else so it's not selected, and choose a different colour for the paths that we can go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make these paths white. So I'm still on this line, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle down there. So that's my first path in my maze that you can get through. I've got to make sure that these are wide enough for my character to move along. So I can do this. So what I could do is I could bring this along, and then I could just draw another one. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. Just keep drawing like this. So I want to make this maze interesting so that I can move through it. And then I'm just going to click somewhere else. Oops, accidentally clicked there. Click somewhere else and just draw another one like this. And then same thing, just keep moving along so that I'm making an interesting pattern that I can move through. So I think I'll make a little L shape down here. So I'll go there and then make a bit of a dead end down here. So just click somewhere else again, and then down there, and I think I'll just move that one. I might just move my arrow key to click on it and just move it a little bit to the left, so that makes that a little bit more interesting to look at. So that would be it. Now what I could do is, so that is my first maze. If I'm making a multi-level maze, so you collect everything in the first maze, then you go to a harder one, what I could then do is I could make a second maze. So I could either make a second maze from scratch just by clicking this button here and going to the paint, or I could right click on this one and then I could duplicate it and then just add some bits to it to make it more complicated. But at the moment I'm just going to make one maze. You'll see in my example up here, this one I've written level 1 here for this maze, and if I go to the backdrops on here, go to the backdrops and look, you'll see I've got level 1 and then I've got level 2. So on my level 2 I've actually put some gates there so that there are some places where you can't get through. So it's exactly the same maze, but you'll see that I've blocked off some places there. Let's have a look at how the main character needs to move in a maze. So our main character is this yellow rocket, and you'll see that we've used this code over here, the up, the down, the right and the left arrows to move around. So that's in a different video about how to move your main character. But the problem is that when we play this game, if we go to the side, we can go right over the red, and with it being a maze, we don't want that to happen. We want this character to not be allowed to do that. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's have a look. So I've actually made one piece of code work here to start with. So I've got this this part here that says when the green flag's clicked, it's going to go to those coordinates. So I want it to go to there. So what I've done is I've just moved this rocket about, and this code over here, go to X, go to Y. Every time I move this, then that code will change a little bit. So that's the code that I want it, the coordinates I want it to go to. So it's going to go to those coordinates, and what I want it to say is I want it to say that if it touches anything red, then it's going to turn around and it's going to bounce back, so it won't be able to go through it. So we're going to use some repetition for this, as we quite often do. We're going to use a forever block, and then we're going to use some selection to say if something happens. So I'm going to go and get this block here, so the if block. And then in the gap here, I want to say if it's touching the colour red. So this is to do with sensing. So I'm going to go to the sensing blocks, and I'm going to get this one that says if touching colour. And then I'm going to hover it over this irregular rectangle. It glows white, and I can just drop it in. But you can already tell that that's the wrong colour. So if I click on this colour, down at the bottom I've got a little paint dropper. So if I click on it, and then I can move this over and choose the colour that I want. So I move it onto the red colour and click, and then it changes to if touching colour red. So I want it to turn around, so I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to get a turn 15 degrees block. But I want it to turn completely all the way around. So of course it needs to turn 180 degrees, half a full turn. It's going to go and face the opposite way to the way it's facing. And I want it to move back 10 steps. So what we're going to do is we're going to try that now. So I'll stop the game and then start it again so it reloads all the code. And let's just try bumping into the side here, and you'll see I can't get over it now. Let's go right, let's go left, it won't work. Let's go up here. So that's how you do it. So that's the way that you can stop your characters going over the top of the maze. Now this is the easiest way to make an NPC move around in a maze. There is a more complicated one that you can find in the advanced moving NPCs video. But in this one, if I take this bat for example, all it does is it just moves backwards and forwards in a line there, and then all these other bats just move backwards and forwards or up and down. So if I just press play, you'll see the way that they move. They're just moving side to side, and in the level 2 version then I've got a bat that goes up and down as well. So the more advanced one, which is much more complicated to actually make, then what that does is that the bats can move anywhere around the maze. They just keep moving around, but this is much easier to do. So if we have a look at the code for this, you'll see that I've started off with this code. So when the game starts, when the green flag's clicked, they go to their starting point. So I choose their coordinate. So this bat, its coordinate is over there. So what I've done is I've just moved the bat, and then I've just dragged the coordinate for the bat and moved it to the right place. So if I just click on this bat again, you'll see that what I've done is I've got its coordinate and I've just moved it and put it there. Now what I've then done is I've said point in direction, and I want it to point in the direction I want it to move. So if you click on this, you'll see it says -90, so it's pointing over to the left. So it's pointing this way, it's going to move this way towards the left. And then the next part of it, over here, this part, you'll see that I've put all this in a forever loop. So let's just take out this if for now and look at this. So we've said it moves one step, and if it's on the edge, it bounces. Now I don't really need this one for this bat because it never touches the edge. It gets to the red and it turns around and it moves backwards and forwards. But I've made the same bit of code for all the bats, and this bat does touch the edge at both edges here. So if it touches the edge of the screen, it bounces. In other words, it turns around 180 degrees and it keeps moving one step. So what I've done is I've added this if you're touching the colour red. So we've explained how to do that and how to move the main character. It turns around and goes the other way. So if I pop that on there, then and click the green flag, you'll see that this bat just moves backwards and forwards. Now I've done the same piece of code for this and also for this bat, because when this bat, this never touches red. It gets to the edge and then it bounces. So this bit of code is if it touches the edge, and this bit of code here with if touching red is if it touches a red wall. And I've done the same thing because what I wanted to do is make the same piece of code, and then if I make another bat, I can just get hold of this code and I can just drag it and drop it on top of the next bat without having to change all of it. Now obviously I'd have to change where it starts from, but apart from that, it means that that code will work either if it touches the red or if it touches the edge. So the other important thing that we have in maze games is we have collisions. So we have a separate video on collisions when one thing bumps into another. So in the maze game, the main collisions are when your main character bumps into non-playable characters. So in other words, in this, the spaceship might bump into a bat and something bad happens, or it bumps into the astronaut which is trying to collect and something good happens. So in this particular game, you bump into the astronaut and then you get an extra point, and then if you bump into the bat you actually lose a life. So you'll see if I go over there, then I actually get a point. So you've got, oh dear, looks like I might be losing a life here. Yeah, there we go. So you bump into the bat and you lose a life. So if you look at the collisions video, you'll see how to write the code for that. We've also got another video about how to get to level 2 if you want to make a multi-level game, or you might just do a simple one-level game. So we've got some other videos that will help you make your maze game as well.